Hello and welcome to More Than a Game, a podcast dedicated to the Premier League, the A-League and more. Today on the show, Victory Active declare rivalry has finally started over a denied tifo, but still sit number 3. City go up against their richest rivals in the Premier League and at Christmas sit atop the tree. And my name's Colby and I'm your host today. Welcoming everybody to our Christmas pod. With me is Damo to take you through the week's A-League and Premier League. Damo, how are we, mate?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. We were just chatting off air. My legs are feeling good after a break last week that saw me run far too many kilometers, but I'm back and ready to start talking about football.
I mean, I don't have any evidence that you can even stand because I haven't seen it since then. So I'm still in fear for your body after that. What you put it through. But we've got a lot coming up on the pod today. So let's get straight into it with moments of the week. Damo, what stood out to you this week?
My moment of the week has to be Ange Postecoglou at Celtic. He took over a sinking ship, and there was a lot of people that questioned the appointment of him. And all you needed to do was scroll through Scottish football Twitter to see the detractors that there were. And he's turned a lot of things around at Celtic already, and everyone's on board now if they weren't already. So it's great to see Ange doing big things in Scotland, and I'm sure there's more to come from him in Celtic.
Yeah, and got the win obviously in the Scottish League Cup, as you were saying. Damo's first piece of silverware and got it over everyone's second team in Scotland, Hibernian. But it was the Furuhashi show for Ange's Celtic, and Rogic I see picked up an assist there as well. So like good results all around. But yeah, like how good for Ange. Yeah, everyone wrote him off before he even touched down. So yeah, just great, and hopefully we'll see him competing for the league title, if not this season, next season going forward. But he looks like he's pretty much won them over now.
Yeah, that's right.
I had a few this week. I've got a few little ones. One is just to keep up. It still looks like a bit of a shit show of a website, but I'm really liking that they're getting a lot more fan content on there. Like people from soccer Twitter seem to just be like writing articles on there and stuff like that. Like there was a few this week in the lead up to the Melbourne Derby. Listener to the pod, Kokofo, I noticed he and Dave from FES had a piece that they did from a City and Victory fan perspective in the lead up to the Derby. I thought that was pretty cool. So yeah, just like to see little things like that.
It's just adding more perspective and giving people a chance to kind of get noticed, right?
Yep. And I also have to give a shout out to my boy Danny Sturridge doing the Drake shot for me cover on his Instagram. He's actually got a pretty good voice, to be fair.
I think one of the comments I saw was Studs just wanted to show off his pipes, and that's the only reason he made it.
Man's got pipes. I am disappointed. It was almost an own goal because, we put out a tweet about it being an I'm a celebrity, get me out of here promo, and absolutely no bites. So I'm a bit.
I was so disappointed that no one took a bite on that. I was very high on that tweet.
I tweeted that thinking it was going to bang, but yeah, you never know. You got to shoot your shot. What about things that didn't hit quite right for you this week, Damo?
Look, I'm not sure if you saw this headline, Colby. It was about a change to the UEFA Nations League. UEFA have proposed that in 2024, all 10 South American teams will join the UEFA Nations League, and all games will still be played in Europe. So I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know if UEFA have got a plan to turn the Nations League into like a World Cup league.
Yeah, it's kind of like eventually. The World Cup league. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's all a bit, it's a bad taste in my mouth that UEFA are just another money grab to make competitive fixtures, and they're adding South American teams to a European competition. So I don't know how that's going to work, given that the Nations League was tabled to be World Cup qualifiers and Euros qualifiers. How does that work now when you're playing against teams not from your confederation? I guess we'll see if it comes to anything.
Yeah, colour me shocked that
that UEFA are doing a money grab.
UEFA have got another money grab on the table. I didn't know about this one, but I kind of wish I didn't. My own goal this week, Damo, is just it's got to go to these Beatty accounts on soccer Twitter. Well, like there have been a few big storylines on soccer Twitter this week that everyone seems to be following, and we'll talk about a few of them on the pod today. But there's these gotcha accounts just popping up. One was tweeting like accounts posing as like official A-League club Twitter accounts. One was pretending to be Western Sydney Wanderers with a message that Carl Robinson had been sacked to try and trick people. And another was, I think it was the same account,
It
turned
was the
itself
same
into
account
a,
that just changed
yeah,
their handle and name and everything.
turned it into a Perth Glory account saying that Sturridge was leaving after being quarantined again. And like one look at it, there's no blue tick and the handle's a bit funny. Like sure, it tricked some people, but I just don't get what's funny about these. Like maybe that's why my Sturridge tweet didn't land, because I just don't get comedy. But like I don't know.
Yeah, they're not for me. I think I've spoken about it before. I don't understand the appeal to get a couple of I gotcha, but some people like it, so I guess that's why they're popular.
Mm. A lot of news items this week, and a lot of stories that we've been following. Biggest one I think would be the Premier League COVID outbreak and potentially A-League. And it's like, I mean, you know, it's everywhere in our lives, and we're all trying to avoid getting it before Christmas, before the Christmas holidays and things like that. But the Premier League seems to have got the worst of it so far, and obviously the UK is going through a pretty rough patch with it at the moment. But I thought there were 4 fixtures this weekend. Do you think they should suspend anything, Damo? What do you think they should do? Like take some cup games off the table, or like just
It's
to
a tough
break up a
call,
bit of
isn't
this
it?
infection?
Because
Yeah.
fixture congestion is already a problem for all these English clubs in and around the Christmas period, and with I think there's already been 7 or 8 games postponed over the last 10 days or something like that. So maybe even more now. Yeah, it's going to be a big problem, and I think that the Premier League have announced that they're doing a press conference Monday night UK time regarding the COVID situation in the Premier League. So, um, there's both theories that they're going to suspend the league for a while. There's another theory that they are going to say they're not going to postpone any more games, and you do what you have to do, and if you have to play the kids, you have to play the kids. It's yeah. So I don't know. It's going to be a very tough situation. I'm glad I'm not the big wigs at the Premier League making that decision, because, like you said, Colby, everyone's gone through this for a long time, and we don't want to have to see football stop again in England.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? Because you can see the arguments for just ploughing on, given the fixture congestion and stuff like that. But then you get teams that are potentially disadvantaged, and the huge
Well, you
financial
sacrifice the
consequences of that.
legitimately of the league, don't you?
Yeah, that's right. And then you get asterisk coming into the conversation again and all of that kind of stuff. But I think it's not so much the asterisk conversation about who's going to win it this season, because I think it's clear that, whoever out of the 1, 2, maybe 3 teams who could win it, that they pretty much deserve it on merit. But you've got teams like Newcastle and Leeds who have had to field significantly weakened teams this week. And I know Eddie Howe has been out there in the media, saying it's a bit unfair on some teams. Not that I can blame him, because his team is just shit house at the moment. But
yeah, well, I mean, we'll talk about both those teams later. But I think Leeds had 11 players out, and none of them were to do with COVID. So, I'm sure we'll talk about them a bit later when we go through the Premier League.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because it's all well and good for like Newcastle to say that, but what happens to the bigger teams who are playing in the 3 and 4 comps? Like, yeah, they've got to be able to catch up their fixtures, and I don't think they can, especially at this time of year when the fixtures are just coming thick and fast. And but it's a bit of an issue as well, isn't it? Like because I think the number of players in the Premier League who are vaxxed is pretty low too. It's like 60 or 70% or something like that. And I was just thinking, like, could vax status play into the January transfer thinking? Like, that's just around the corner.
Well, a
That
couple
window
of
opens
clubs
up
have already. A
yeah,
couple of clubs have already said that. I think Jurgen Klopp said in the last 24 hours that Liverpool won't be signing any unvaccinated players. Steven Gerrard said that vaccination status will be considered for Aston Villa if they're trying to sign anyone in January. So, definitely it's going to be something that the clubs will have to consider. And it's clearly going, it's clearly a touchy subject for a lot of people in that conversation. But I don't really know what else you can do.
yeah, it's a bit like injury history now, isn't it? It's like, well, if a player's not vaccinated, it's sort of the equivalent of hiring a player that's got a very dodgy injury history and could be on your physios bench at any time. So yeah, don't blame some of the managers that are starting to look at stuff like that. And we don't know what kind of a problem this will be in the A-League yet either, because obviously we've had just the one fixture postponed this weekend. Brisbane Roar was supposed to host Perth Glory on Saturday night, but one of the Perth Glory players picked up COVID and sent the whole squad into a 14-day quarantine because of the local laws up here in Queensland. And now it doesn't look like they'll play again until January because of all the COVID restrictions, both here in Queensland and over in WA. Like, what an absolute mess. And you really got to feel for these Glory players who would be in like a hotel room in Christmas, most likely, unless they sort out some alternative plan.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? And I think that's probably primarily to do with, as you said, both the Queensland and WA governments, which have been the hardest on and probably the most successful on the COVID zero policy. But it just comes with the nature of what the laws are in Brisbane at the moment. And I mean, we saw also a Newcastle player from the Jets test positive recently after that big outbreak in Newcastle last week, and their game went ahead as planned. So we don't know if that's going to spread any further, and that's going to become more of an issue for them in weeks to come or days to come, even. But yeah, it's knocking on everyone's door at the moment, COVID, and the A-League is definitely a part of that.
Yeah, hopefully we're not too impacted, but you just never know, like given the different state regimes and things like that. So I guess, over this Christmas period, we'll just be grateful for any football that we can watch, to be honest. Just moving on, there are a couple of other things here, Damo. Have you got a bit of an update for us on the National Second Division? I think there was some movement on that this week.
Yeah, look, I think it was an announcement midweek that Football Australia have a plan with a bit of the windfall from the equity sale to Silver Lake that we'll probably talk about soon as well. That they would use part of that funding to help fund a national second division and help kick that off for, I think it was 2024 was the tabled year for it. So yeah, look, it's a conversation that won't ever go away in football in Australia, and people have got their opinions on it, whether they think it'll work or not. And I think if we throw our minds back a couple of years ago, there was a kind of a report or a study done into what it would cost some of the state league clubs to compete in a league, and the FA said it would cost about $2.5 million a year per club to fund a fully professional club in the national second division. And then the PFA themselves went away and did a study of similar merit to see what they think it would cost and what they think, given the union rules that they would want to include. And they said it'd be closer to $5.5 to $6 million annual budget for each club. So that's a stark difference in funding. And, this, like I said before, this conversation won't ever go away. And whether or not the national second division kicks off in another 30 years time, I'm sure it'll be a good thing for the league, but they have to make sure they get it right. And I'm sure it'll be a good thing for football.
It's just fuel budget, isn't it?
Yeah, just exactly.
Petrol,
travel,
and plane fuel. Yeah, travel budget.
Yeah,
to get around the country. Yeah, I'd love to see it go ahead as like a lot of people would, but yeah, just the viability and the logistics, just it almost seems insurmountable at some point. But I think the good thing about all of this is that it seems to be firmly on the agenda. The fans are being listened to, like they want it, and it's being left up to the APL to sort of figure it all out now. So yeah, I'm really keen to see where it gets to.
It actually, it looks to me as though the national second division is actually going to be run and governed by Football Australia, similarly to how the Premier League
like
runs
the Premier League
independently from the EFL. That Football Australia are looking to create their own division, which acts as a feeder league to the independent A-leagues. So I think that's probably the best way to go about it, because they've both got independent funding and they both don't have to really engage with each other until a point where promotion and relegation becomes on the table.
Well,
so that
sense.
might be
Football
a way
Australia
to do
have
it.
got the expertise in running a league, right? They were running the A-League until this year. So yeah, that makes sense to do it really just the same way as the Premier League set up. So interesting. And yeah, there's the Silver Lake sale, Damo. You mentioned that earlier. That that sort of went through this week. It was it's official, right? That equity sale has gone ahead.
Yeah, it's gone ahead. I'm not sure exactly what the initial windfall payment that the A Leagues receive. I think it's been reported that they got about $6 or $7 million Australian dollars immediately as a payment. But obviously they've sold 1/3 of equity of the A League to a US investment firm, which also quite controversially holds 10% stake in the City Football Group. So there was a bit
No
of conflict of
morals.
interest, there between an equity company that owns 10% of the City Football Group now owning 33.3% of a league that involves a club from the City Football Group and having a voting stake in that league. So, but I mean, it's clearly not an issue for the APL. They've done a fit and proper test, as they call it. But I think all in all, the A Leagues will get close to $140 million investment from Silver Lake, which values the league at just over 400 million Australian dollars. So, whatever you think of what the value of the A League is, it's a good cash influx, and it's a good way for the league to be able to grow. And it's a good way for the APL or the A Leagues or whatever the organization calls himself now to have a bit of liquid to be able to work on some things. So I think it's all in all, it's going to be a really good thing for the league. I guess we'll see where that money goes to and how it's used, but I have no negative connotations to what they've done here.
Yeah, it sounds like only a good thing to me. Obviously, it can and should be scrutinized as it has been. But one thing that stands out to me straight away is that one of the points of having an independent league is having something that could attract investment, and it's done that straight away. So that's only a positive sign for the league.
Yeah, and if we move on to another piece of news that was surrounding the A League this week, and I'm not sure if you saw much about this, Colby, but the APL has signed a wagering partner, as they've called it, an exclusive wagering partner with the betting company Neds, which is all around every single stadium. It's on advertising boards, and which is it was a bit controversial, you could say, because 6 out of the 12 A League clubs actually have a policy within their club, which is like a no gambling policy. So 6 clubs in the A League refuse to take on sponsorship from gambling companies. And you would have thought if there was a vote from A League clubs, then you wouldn't have had a majority that would have said, okay, we'll go ahead with this. So in that line of thought, it seemingly looks that the A Leagues or the APL have gone above the clubs and signed this deal without actually having consulted the clubs. And there was an incident during a A-League women's game on the weekend where the Ned sponsorship was rolling around on the advertising boards in the first half. And halfway through the first half, there was a couple of Wanderers staff or some that covered the sponsorship boards up. And then as the players came out for the second half was a message running around on those same boards that said it was along the lines of gambling, get help if you need, or something like that, was a get help gambling message without the Ned sponsorship. So yeah, it's that was kind of where the ugly head reared itself about this deal and how it went down. So I haven't heard too much about it after the first initial criticisms of it, but it'll be really interesting to see if there's any more fallout around this.
That is an interesting one, because I'd be curious to know, whether the sort of due process was followed and the clubs voted for it. If they in fact needed to, you assume they would. But the other thing that crosses my mind about this is that maybe all of the proper processes were followed and the clubs did in fact vote for it, and keeping their own hands a bit clean. Like, on the one hand, they've got their anti-gambling policies or gambling sponsorship policies for their clubs, but they can sort of go into it with clean hands, in a sense that this is a league thing and it's nothing to do with our club. And, hand on heart, fans, we voted against it, but it was all those other big bad clubs that voted for it. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit cynical.
You very well could be right, but I think part of it also comes down to this equity sale to this investment company, right? Who now have voting rights as to what
Mm,
happens in the A League, and it has sort of watered down the the value of each A League club's vote to things like this,
mm.
right? So if the A Leagues and the clubs is 66% of the vote, you would assume then the clubs are even less, and even if the
It's
clubs would
diluted it. Yeah, yeah,
even if the clubs would vote in a majority, really, how much power do they have now given this equity sale? So obviously, we don't really know the ins and outs of how that works and how these things happen. It's not very transparent in that kind of business front, but yeah, it would be really interesting to kind of see how this all came about.
yeah. Well, the um the FA, I don't know what kind of structure the APL has, but the FFA, you could go and look into their annual reports and how their governance was set up and all that kind of stuff. I'd be interested. We should do if we've got time, we should do a governance special on the pod one day and do a deep dive into all of this stuff for
That's
anyone
right,
who's
right,
interested.
right in your area, Colby. That one.
It's prime. It's prime. I'm interested. I want to look. I want an excuse to look this up. Listeners, get into our DMs. Give me an excuse to do a governance pod. But now on to equally exciting things. It's round 5 of the Isuzu Ute A-League men. Damo, let's kick off. We can only kick off in one place this week, and it's the Melbourne Derby 2-2. What a game. You were there. How did you see it?
Yeah, look, the first thing I can say is this is the best atmosphere of an A-League game I've been to in a long while, and maybe that's a recency bias because we all haven't really been to that many games over the past couple of years, but yeah, it was electrifying atmosphere at Amy Park on Saturday night, and the game was just as good, and particularly the second half. The first half it got a while to get going, but yeah, the second half was it was the stadium was rocking, and it was a great game to be at.
Yeah, and great to see that crowd on TV. It just sounded and looked absolutely brilliant. Exactly what we want for the league. Great to see that after some disappointing ones as well. And in terms of the result, was 2-2. Victory went up early, and then City got 2 quick goals, and Victory got a late one. But I guess just looking at it from a high level first, and then we'll get into the specifics. Which side do you think came away looking better?
Oh, it's tough. I feel like City probably had the better of the chances all in all, but I don't think you could say that City deserved to win. Um, and I got really wrapped up in the game and the atmosphere that was, and I was sort of down the Victory end of the ground, and so I went away thinking that Victory deserved to win because I was just encased in this Victory supporters section. I went back and I watched the highlights and I watched the game, and City really probably had the better of the chances, but I don't think either team could definitively say that they deserve to win that game, which is why we love derbies, right? Because that's what they are. They're back and forth, and you get games like this, and you get spectacles like this.
And just the fight back was the thing that stood out to me from the Victory. After going up early and swaggering around, and their fans were back to their arrogant best as they have been in recent weeks, they concede 2 quick goals. Everything quietens down, and there's a big period in the game where they're behind, and City are dominating and looking like they could get a third. And then for the Victory to come back and get a late goal. Look, we might say it's soft like Glover. We could talk about that, but the mentality from the Victory to fight back, I think, was pretty good, especially after copying those back-to-back derby losses and like 14 goals or whatever it was last season. For that team to come back and fight back in the way that they did, I thought it was brilliant from the Victory.
Yeah, you're right. And look, when Jamie McLaren's goal went in, the Victory fans, particularly down the northern end of the ground and on the terrace there, they were still making a lot of noise. The ball went in, they were still singing their songs, they were still in good spirits. But I think it was 2 goals in 9 minutes or something that City scored, and as soon as that Naboo goal went in, you could just feel the energy just get sucked out of the stadium, and for the next maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes it was a real dull kind of vibe down that end of the ground. And yeah, that the D'Agostino goal just exploded the stadium and exploded the game again, and that kind of gave Victory the belief that they could win this game. So, bit of luck maybe that they got the goal, but you've got to hit the target, as Tommy C loves me saying. You have to hit the target, and D'Agostino did, and that's what can happen. So, yeah, but like you said, it shows good resolve from a team that last year really lacked that.
And who gave the bigger assist for that goal? Was it Glover or the Victory keeper who actually got the assist?
there's, I don't know. Glover did have a shocker for that goal, didn't he?
How could you be called Glover and have weak hands, though? Come on.
He got a glove on it, but it wasn't a big enough glove.
And let's talk about some of the performances that stood out as well, because I want to call a few out. We'll start with City. I thought Naboo and Atkinson in particular had a brilliant game.
Yeah, I think they linked up on that right hand side really well. And this is the first time that, correct me if I'm wrong, that the first time this season that Atkinson has actually started as a fullback. I had the feeling that he almost saw himself as a winger and was kind of waiting in the wings to come off the bench on the wing, and then kind of play that role. But he played a bit more of a deeper role that we saw him playing last year, and it was good to see. It was really good to see Atkinson and Naboo link up, and you're right, they both had a really good game.
And Tommy C got his wish. Lecky didn't start. He wasn't in the squad. I don't know what happened to him, actually. I'm just the thought just popped into my head now that Lecky just wasn't there at all.
Yeah, look, I think this is probably a bit of smart team management from Kisnorbo. If I'm Patrick Kisnorbo and I want to drop Matt Lecky for not playing well, I'm not going to put him on the bench. I'm going to take him out of the squad, and I'm going to get people guessing as to, is he injured? Is he not well? Is he away? Not just I'm dropping him because he's out of form, and I'd want to keep those questions out there and kind of keep that motivation up for Matt Lecky, and maybe privately tell him that he's been dropped. So I think it's probably a bit of gamesmanship there from Kisnorbo, who's done that in the past. And if that's the case, I think that's a really clever way to drop him.
And who stood out to you from the Victory?
I think Jake Brimmer had a brilliant game. Again, I think he's been great all season so far. And Rojas again, I think was good as well. So their two main players so far this year stood up for them again. And it'd be remiss of me not to mention that the 15-year veteran Lee Broxham had a great game, and he's the kind of guy you want in playing in a derby. He's been there that many times. He's probably played in 50 odd Melbourne derbies over the years. So that's the experience you want in a game like that.
I thought he might have been a little bit at fault for the Naboo goal, but good for an old bloke. Good game, good outing for an old bloke. But I thought also Margiotta had a brilliant game as well. Yeah. The way he was dropping deep and then feeding the ball as well, and
he really allows the wingers to get past him, doesn't he? Which is sort of what Toivonen did really well in his time at Victory. He would come and he'd play back to goal, and he would let the wingers get past him. And I think Victory really lacked that last year. And I think that Margiotta has allowed Falami to kind of have a bit more freedom, and we've seen a bit better from him, although probably not what everyone still expects.
Yeah. And I mean, we can't talk about this game without talking about the Tifo Gate, Damo. During the week, there was just a shitstorm on social media. Apparently, the Melbourne Victory Active, their new active group, wanted to have a Tifo at the game, and it was denied by Melbourne City with no reason given. And this fan group went on a rant on their social media, and that got picked up by, For Fuck's Sake, the Victory fan podcast. And Victory fans were just raging all over Twitter, calling City cowards and saying they had no morals and no fans. And it was just an absolute shit show. Before we go on, Damo, just at this juncture, who's more obsessed with crowd numbers, Victory fans or South Melbourne Mike?
I wouldn't know about South Melbourne Mike. He blocked me on Twitter years ago. So.
No, neither. But eventually they did get in a couple of banners. And I have had it pointed out in our mentions, Damo, that we should know the difference between banners and tifos. So, thank you to one of the Victory fans who I'm sure is not a listener to the pod and doesn't follow us on social media, but made sure to get in our comments to point that out. But there was a couple in there in the end. One was a quite a tasteful one in memory of Ben Diaz, saying 1 year has passed and you'll live on forever. So I thought that was quite nice. And then they didn't show this one on TV, but of course it went all over social media. There was another one that said, "Fuck CFG, disease on football."
Yeah, look, for me, that's the kind of stuff derbies are all about, right? Is the Victory wanted to take a jab at their rivals, and City are an easy target given their owners and the sports washing that goes on there that we've spoken about before. So, yeah, I like to see that kind of stuff. It adds fuel to the fire. The next derby will be even bigger and better because of something like this. The fans will have, a little bit more animosity in the stadium. It'll get a little bit hotter during the game. I don't see anything wrong with this. It's part of the game. I like it.
I just thought it was hilarious that this is the thing. This is the thing that really fired these guys up. Like these like ultras, and like it's just they couldn't get their tifo approved. And this like really fired them up. And they said in their statement, "Now you've started the real rivalry." But I'm just sort of thinking like they were going on so much on the line that kept going out on social media was like, if you're not letting any tifo in, if you're not letting any tifo in unless it's like clearly wrong, you're completely discouraging of active support. Like, if there's no tifo, there's no active support and you're completely trashing it. But like, surely this has done more to encourage active support on both sides and like spiced up the rivalry than any tifo ever could have done.
Yeah, and look, I don't understand the Victory fans thinking. They're the away team. Why would the home team let them have this exuberant, extravagant display that outdoes the home team's display?
But Damo, they're wheeling out pictures
stupid.
of the Milan derby and all these European derbies where it's allowed. So why can't we have it here?
Yeah, who cares? I like the way it played out, and I thought it was brilliant, and I think it's only going to make the games better.
As a neutral, I thought this week was just brilliant on Twitter. And then, of course, after the fact, you had A-League memes going off early, tweeting that the Diaz one was the one that City rejected. Of course, it was baseless and completely inflammatory. And then had to issue an apology, like clearly like a City admin or some official from the club had like given them a rev up in their DMs, and they go out and just issue this like non-apology and delete their initial tweet. And like, that was going to be my own goal this week, but I didn't want to give it that much oxygen. But bloody hell,
I've done it again.
Speaking of oxygen, before we move on, you had Jason Davidson in the Victory Terraces just spraying his like not unvaccinated oxygen everywhere.
I think Tommy C had a good point. He said Davidson's got 2 red cards so far this season, and he's sitting out a game because of a suspension. And the Victory fans are lauding him like a hero in the stands. And I was like, yeah, well, it's a good point. But if you think about it, it's a great PR move from Jason Davidson, because all of a sudden a guy that's now missed 4 games this season so far through suspension is one of the fans' favorite players, because all he did was spend 2 minutes in the front of the stand with a megaphone leading one song. So
he got a lot of photos taken of him though.
It's clever, very clever by Jason Davidson, and all credit to him.
Absolutely. But you wouldn't have seen this, Damo, but on the TV, on the broadcast, they were Tara and Archie were talking about it at halftime, and Archie was like almost going in there being like, "Oh yeah, don't know, bit irresponsible maybe from Davidson, like no masks and all this stuff." And I'm like, that's a bit rich coming from you, Archie.
Yeah.
Robbie Thompson, of course, was excellent on the call. Our boy, and Beathy, got to give him a shout out too. I thought he reffed the game excellently. Like, there was a crucial decision early in the game. That one where he had to have a second look at the Metcalf tackle was a lunging one. Studs into Rojas, who ended up going off injured. And Beath gave the yellow in real time and went and reviewed it on the VAR and stuck with his decision. It would have changed the game, not for the better. There was nothing malicious in it, so he absolutely made the right decision. And I thought it was just excellent. And he barely put a foot wrong that the whole game.
Yeah, I think he did a really good job in derbies can get spicy and a tackle flies in and everyone wants to go in and throw handbags at each other. And I think Beatty did a great job at, thwarting that kind of stuff happening over and over again and letting the game play so that wouldn't happen. Often we can see derbies turn into stop start because all these tackles start flying in. And he did a great game controlling a great job controlling a game that was a big occasion.
Let's move on, though, because there were other games that were played this weekend, believe it or not. We spent a lot of time on that game, but I thought it was just a cracking game, the best game in the A-League I've seen this season, and well worth spending the time on. But MacArthur, top of the table, thanks to a 2-1 win over Newcastle. I thought this was a very interesting game on paper, obviously, because Newey have been the sort of surprise of the season so far and how well they've been playing the Puppers ball. And MacArthur have just been humming along and clearly getting the results as well. So a few key moments from this one. We had an early red card to MacArthur. Curto with the last man challenge on Ewell. Ewell stayed on his feet, rounded the goalkeeper, and basically they had the ball in the net, but Alex King didn't play the advantage. Should he play the advantage there, Damo? What's going on?
Yeah, this one's tough, right? Because as soon as the challenge happened, the referee knew he was giving a red card, so he blew his whistle. And he knew he was going to give a red card right away. And if he watches it back in hindsight, he probably could have. He probably would say that he could have given another couple of seconds and let the goal go in and then come back. But I think as a referee, if you see a challenge like that, in your head, you've gone, that's red, I'm blowing straight away. And so you can't really fault him for making that decision. It's tough, but at the end of the day, he can't go back on it. He blew his whistle and then and made his decision early. So yeah, maybe he could have played on, and maybe he'll say he could have played on, but you can't fault him for doing what he did.
Yeah, I think so. And so MacArthur down to 10 men early in this one. And as you'd expect, Newey then take the initiative and go up through a beautiful free kick from our boy Mikkel Tadze. But after the half, don't know what they've been said in the sheds at MacArthur, but they came out and Danny De Silva gets the Bulls back into it with a delicious volley. And then it's all MacArthur just defending, soaking up the pressure and counter-attacking, just perfectly played before right at the end of the game, you have Meredith with this thumping bar post header from a set piece, also from De Silva. And so absolutely brilliant comeback down to 10 men. How much did the cow paddock play into this, Damo, the pitch?
Oh, well, Newcastle definitely wouldn't be happy about it, but I don't know how much you could say the pitch played into it. Both teams have got to play on it, and it's not as though MacArthur train on that pitch all day, every day either. So, but
Newcastle just want to play silky football, though, don't they?
Newcastle owner. I just wanted to make a shout out to Dunlop De Silva with that volley. He's actually really come into his own this season. Obviously had a great year last year with Central Coast, but I think he stepped it up another level since he's been at MacArthur, and he's probably been one of, if not their best player, at least their most influential player in terms of creating attacking chances. So yeah, I'm interested to see what Dunlop can do for the rest of the year.
He was brilliant in this game. And all jokes about the pitch aside, we've got a question from listener Josh Ferreira on Facebook. How do you lose to 10 men? He did say in a Mickey Mouse League, but we're ignoring that part of the question.
Yeah, look, it's a good question. And not just 10 men, but you're 1-0 up against 10 men. So it's not a good look for Newcastle, but it's a really, really good look for MacArthur. And look, they've been a really good team so far this year. And I think as soon as that goal went in from De Silva, there was that kind of feel that MacArthur were going to score a winner, but there was never really a feel that Newcastle were going to run away with it after that. So momentum, goals change games. It's an easy saying to come out with, but as soon as De Silva scored that goal, MacArthur just had this belief that they were going to win the game, and they did.
And the McBulls, no one's really talking about them. We've been talking about them for the past couple of weeks on the pod. Them and the Woo, the new franchises in this league. No one likes them. No one fancies them. But are they the real deal?
Yeah, look, I was thinking about that before the pod. It's it's two clubs that everyone likes to hate, but they're two clubs that they're doing things right at the moment, and I think particularly with both of them, they're winning very unglamorous games too. They're grinding out results, which is people always say, if you can play poorly and get points, you're a really good team. So yeah, they'll both be at the pointy end come the end of the season. And I think it would just really hurt A-League fans if that was the grand final.
Yeah, it would. And oh man, like on the one hand, I would love it, but on the other hand, like how many fans would be in that stadium?
It'd be a dead vibe, that's for sure.
Yeah, I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know. Maybe people would come out of the woodworks. They'd get a lot of casual fans coming in, and they might stick around with the club. Who knows?
Well, to be fair, if it was a grand final in Melbourne, I'd probably go. If it was Wu versus MacArthur in Melbourne, I'd probably go just because I'd want to be at an A-League grand final. But yeah, fans of those teams, you couldn't fill a stadium with two sets of fans from those two clubs.
Who would you want to win it?
If that was the grand final, probably the Wu. Put some respect on John Aloisi's name.
Fuck. That guy. Just before we move on, another question from Josh Ferreira. He got a 2 for this week. Just wanted to comment on the $40 to sit in the away bay at MacArthur, saying it's nuts and they rent the stadium for peanuts. What do you have to say about that, Damo?
Yeah, I mean, ticket prices are a big deal everywhere in the world, but $40 to go to Campbelltown is stiff enough, let alone watch MacArthur play Newcastle. So you couldn't pay me $40 to travel to Campbelltown.
Central Coast got another big scalp this week, and I don't know if we're saying big scalp because it was the Wanderers.
I was going to say, I don't know if you can call the Wanderers a big scalp.
Yeah, I think the big team won here, but like before we talk about the Wanderers, because there's a lot to talk about, let's just give the respect to Central Coast. How good have they been?
Yeah, they've been great, and they've really carried on from last year. And I think in my preseason preview, that was kind of the concern was it the manager? What was it that got them through? Was it the and look, they lost a few key players, and I think they've signed players that have really replaced with quality, if not better quality. So props to their recruitment that was able to bring those players in. They've got some young players that are coming through that of their own academy that are great. And yes, Central Coast, they look like they'll be up and about the pointy end of the table at the end of the season. So they're doing things the right way. And I'm really glad. And like I said, all year last year when they were doing well, the league is better off when Central Coast are playing well.
And that's it, isn't it? Like a lot of these teams are turning over season after season, but you just like coaches make a huge difference, but recruitment, I think, is often a little bit underappreciated in the difference that it makes. Like you get your foreigners right and your team's away. And we've seen that in Central Coast and Newcastle this season. Like Central Coast have got in Moresche, Goddard, who's both of whom have already fired. And then they've just seamlessly brought in academy products like Farrell and Hall. And then Nisbet, I think, is in his second season now and coming off contract at the end of the season, but he's been brilliant.
Yeah, look, I think that'll be probably their biggest piece of business to try and shore up is making sure he signs a contract extension. There's going to be other A-League clubs knocking about for him. He's probably got in the back of his mind that he can go somewhere else in the world and play football. That'll be the best piece of business that Central Coast do this year is if they keep him.
Now on to Western Sydney Wanderers. Carl Robinson, lots of pressure on him on social media. I'm seeing Robbo out. He was asked after the game about his forward line, who like are pretty good on paper, just shooting blanks, not creating opportunities. And he was asked this really directly in the presser about why this such a talented forward line aren't creating more chances. And Carl Robinson just said, well, I don't know. What do you think about that response?
Yeah, look, it's quite ironic that the now infamous press conference that he gave last year in that game against Brisbane, where he said there's no leaders in the locker room, it almost feels like that Carl Robinson really lacks this kind of leadership quality to coach a team at the top level. And from everything I've seen, Carl Robinson actually looks like the poor leader. So he throws his own team under the bus. He throws his own staff under the bus, and he's done that time and time again. He's never taken responsibility for anything the Wanderers have done poorly. From all reports, he's created a really bad culture at the club. I just find it really ironic that he was lamenting the fact that the team had no leaders when he's not a leader himself.
And just to play devil's advocate, Damo, let's say Carl Robinson is doing everything he can and leading the team as well as he can, aside from the presses. But if the boys are just not performing, what can you do? And is Dimmy is your boy looking a bit thick?
Look, he's looking a bit thick. He's been in the Arabian Peninsula for a couple of years, so he's come home and he's looking well fed, and he's got a couple of kids now. So maybe, who knows what's going on there? But look, in all seriousness, if you look at Wanderers' squad on paper, they should be one of the best teams in the league. So that comes down to me that this problem might be deeper than the manager, but it's still the manager that has to put them into line and get things working, right? And they've got everything there in terms of players, the right people to make things click. And for some reason, it's not clicking. The first person to fall has to be the manager, the blame, and he's taking none of it.
And let's talk about potentially other issues at the club, because the manager might just be the sort of the manifestation of the other problems that are wrong at the club, because we've also seen on social media this week ex-staff and players all coming out of the woodworks to, air the dirty laundry of the club, naming in particular John Satsimas, the CEO, and Gavin Costello, the head of football operations. You had Patrick Svansvik, just tweeting that he once coached for this club, and because of the two mentioned names in the comments, who we just mentioned before, he's no longer there, and says, unfortunately, no club identity besides amazing supporters. And then you had Dean Heffernan, who's the former manager of the women's team, come out on Twitter as well, saying JT and Gavin Costello have created the most toxic football environment I've seen in 20 years of football. Paul Lederer, the owner, wouldn't be aware of what goes on. How can 60-odd players and 4 coaches over 5 years be wrong? I rejected a 3rd year because of the above. And then he also tweeted that working in a corporate has more soul than Western Sydney Wanderers as a football club, which is just a damning indictment on the club.
Yeah, like when I read that, I said, okay, well, that's fucking grim.
Yeah. God. So, look, it looks like the problems may run deeper than the manager of the day.
Yeah, and look, I think for the better part of 3 or 4 years now, the RBB have really lamented JT, as they call him, I think he's the CEO of the club, is he? They really don't like him, and they haven't liked him for a long time, and they've had multiple banners that have, said that he needs to leave the club and leave their club. And I think the RBB, and I saw a tweet or a post somewhere on social media, and the RBB, one of their big songs was "Suits will come and go, but the terrace will stay forever," or something like that. The lyrics go, and they're really living by that this year. Is that they need a couple suits to go, I think.
Or maybe they just need to nick Papas from the Jets.
Yeah, it looks that's their next move, is Papas, and bring a few people with him and see if that works out.
Papas at a few Jets players. I mean, that's the way to go, isn't it?
That's what you tried last time. Let's try it again.
And listeners, if you haven't checked out RBTV, the fan TV, it's the Arsenal TV of the red and black block. The podcast was just chef's kiss viewing this week. The reaction podcast to this loss was incredible. So I encourage you to check it out and give those guys a subscribe and a follow, because the content is worth it. I thought it was also just funny on Twitter after this. There's some more funny things from our listeners and soccer Twitter as well. Kokofo on Twitter was saying we need a Netflix series ASAP on the Wanderers, and then Run Them Memes makes a mock-up of ACL then nothing. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And finally, we had another question on Twitter from Braden saying, if you finish in the top half of just 33% of the time, then you're not a big club.
Yeah, and I think I remember pulling one of these stats out in the season review last year about Wanderers that, yeah, if you look at the history of their, I think over 10 years in the league now, nearly, um, they've actually had a really, really poor run. And if it wasn't for the incredible support over the first couple of years, everyone would consider them on the same level as the Wu and MacArthur.
Yeah, pretty much. And it was, that brilliant start that really made their name. And then, yeah, they've sort of been just trading off that for, ever since. But we do need to move on. Sydney got their first win of the season, 2-1 over the Wellington Phoenix. Who else but Elvis Cam Sober opening the scoring? I still just cannot believe this. Like, what world are we living in? Like, sure, global pandemic, can believe it, but Elvis Cam Sober leading the line and scoring goals for Sydney FC. Unbelievable. But drills a loose ball in the box in this one. Wellington defenders looked like they were ball watching a little bit, but tidy finish. He scored 5 goals for the VUC last season, and I think was like one of their top scorers with that. But he's already got 2 this season, and we're early days, so 2 in 5 for him. So we'll keep an eye on that. But Sydney would get a second goal through Lafondra before an 85th minute consolation from my boy Ben Wayne for Wellington, but it wasn't enough. Sydney, good to get off the mark. The crowd looked pretty abysmal. I know the COVID cases are rising there and everyone's trying to avoid sort of getting done with it before Christmas. But yeah, what did you make of just like the look of this game? It was a pretty dour game on the pitch. So let's talk about off it.
Yeah, I only watched the mini match of this earlier. I missed it yesterday, but yeah, from everything that looked like it, it just really looked really dull, both on and off the pitch. It was probably hard to watch the full game, to be honest. I didn't watch it, but I'm kind of glad I didn't in the end.
I wish I
Watch it on
didn't.
a Sunday night. Yeah, you probably had better things to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it's Sydney, lucky, sorry, not lucky, happy to get their first win of the season. But I just want to say a shout out to Caceres, who I think probably has been one of, if not the best player in the league so far this season in terms of his performances. And I think that's backed up by his he's leading the count in the Alex Tobin medal for Paramount Plus's player of the year. So yeah, that's it's he was pushing his way in front of Luke Bratton in that role in the 6 at Sydney, and he's really looked like he stepped up and he's had to take that on and a lot of responsibility. And he showed promise for a lot of years, and I think he's probably 30, if not older already, Caceres. So, he's finally playing the football that everyone thought he should be playing, and he's actually been really good to watch. And as much as I hate Sydney, I've really enjoyed watching him play football lately.
Yeah, I can't deny that he was one of their best in this game, and he's been quite good this season already. Just not a player I'm particularly fussed about. Like, I've just never really liked the way he's gone about his business. But personal grudges aside, yeah, I think he's been great this season, and he had a great game. But just on to Wellington, Thrillhouse FC asks, why do the Knicks always play teams into form? Newey, Sydney, probably get 5 put past us next week against the Mariners.
Yeah, it's tough. I think Wellington have conceded the most goals so far in the league too. And the win that they did get was probably a bit fortunate, and they're lucky not to find themselves stuck to the bottom of the league with Brisbane on 1 point. So, I think we did speak about in the preview, everyone bar Jesse, which was maybe a bit of hopeful optimism in being a Knicks fan, that the Knicks were really going to struggle this year. And I actually think I tipped them to finish last. So it's tough at Wellington. It's tough being away from Wellington. And it was always going to be hard for them. And I think that the effects of everything they've done over the last probably 2 years is really starting to weigh on them.
Yeah, it's so tough. Like we talked about Perth before. getting stuck with this unfortunate COVID situation over Christmas, and they're going to have a hugely disrupted season again. But the Knicks have had their own special kind of full season disruption again, just not being able to even play a game at home in front of their fans. And to continue putting in decent performances like that, essentially playing every game as an away game, it's not getting talked about that much anymore, just because it's just something that's continuing.
It's
But it
become
does,
normalized now.
it does bear repeating, because it's a pretty shit situation for them. And to just continue in the way they have, and now they've got another setback in their keeper. Ollie Sale went down injured in this one, and young Alex Paulson stepped up, who looks like Gerald from Hey Arnold, with the hairstyle, but he stepped up and made a couple of good saves and looked pretty good.
He had a great game. And look, Wellington have never failed to produce good goalkeepers. We've seen that year after year. New Zealand have never failed to produce good goalkeepers, and obviously the best of them go to the Phoenix. So, it's another young goalkeeper that's come through the Knicks that looks very promising.
Yeah, he was my favourite young Wellington goalkeeper since Keegan Smith.
That's a name I haven't heard in a while.
I was talking to a couple of Wellington fans on Twitter about that when Alex Paulson came on, and we were tweeting about him. And it was a big throwback, and I just really love that, like, shit talking, like, who did he blow a little kiss to? Was it Barisha?
Yes, it was definitely Barisha. Barisha had a penalty, and then Barisha slotted the penalty and got in his face, Ruud van Nistelrooy style.
Yeah, that was just one of the peak A-League moments, and we're all here for it. But in terms of Wellington, we've spoken about the sort of hardship that they're having playing away from home. But, like, what's actually missing aside from that? What's wrong?
Look, I think they lack the key players that can kind of stand up and grab the game by the scruff of the neck. And last season, De Vea did that time after time, game after game. If they weren't playing well, you could always rely on him to grab the game by the scruff of the neck and really run the show. They haven't got anyone that can do that. And I think defensively they're struggling. I think defensively their shape looks all over the place, which is quite ironic, given that was probably their strength last year, was their formation, and the way they set up was always consistently good. So I don't know where it's going wrong. But funnily enough, I don't think Ufuk Talay his head is on the chopping block, like other teams doing poorly. Brisbane's poor. Warren Moon his job's in question. The Wanderers, Carl Robinson's in question. The Wellington aren't playing well at all, but I don't think Ufuk Talay's job is in question. I just think there's a few missing pieces, and there's a lot going on, and they'll be better off by sticking by him.
Yeah, and there's a big missing piece, of course, at the back in the shape of Taylor, who was a huge out pretty much on the eve of the season, with that shock retirement, or somewhat of a shock in certain circles. So, they've got problems right up the spine, and creatively as well. So it's no surprise when you consider all of those things that it's not quite happening for the Phoenix at the moment. Western Sydney and Adelaide, final game we're going to talk about for the weekend, and final game of the weekend. It was the opener, the Aloisi Classico on Friday night, but the Woo ground out another 1-0 result. That's 4 in a row for them now. They looked pretty good. Like, their new recruits in Dylan Wenzel-Halls, Lacroix, who is the Isuzu Ute A-League men VVD, and Connor Payne as well. All looked good. But just on Connor Payne, lastly there, Damo, should we be putting some respect on his name? We've trashed him a lot.
I love to hate Connor Payne, but he's been good so far this year, and he was great last year. So, credit to him. He's really turned into quite a decent A-League level player. So, he's kind of found his place, and he's doing really well.
And Aloisi, like, many doubted him, but the results are speaking for themselves at the moment. But is he actually good, or is he the new Ole Gunnar Solskjaer of the A-League?
He's definitely the Ole Gunnar Solskjaer of the A-League. He's in the fact that he's living off one historical moment that the fans love him for across the country. But
he's got buddies in the media who are propping him up constantly. And he just relies on a few stars in a good team to coast him to glory.
I think the Woo have started the season quite well, just out of sheer will to not concede goals. And look, they've played 5 games this year. They lost 1-0 and won 1-0 4 times. So, they've scored 4 goals and they've conceded 1, and they've got 12 points to start the year. We will inevitably see their games open up a bit more. They've clearly got trouble scoring goals. At the moment, they don't have trouble defending goals because everyone's playing into their hands. Everyone's putting balls into the box, and Lacroix is just eating up everything like he's having breakfast. As soon as he's eating it up like a bowl of lies.
Like gobbling it up like a big bowl of lies.
So as soon as teams find out a way to take him out of the game, then we were going to have problems defensively, I would imagine. And I don't think they'd be focusing right now on their problems scoring goals, which they've got problems scoring goals. I think outside of maybe Brisbane, they've scored the fewest goals in the league this year. Brisbane have scored 1, sorry. And then the Woo level next worst in the league with 4 goals scored. So there's a few teams that have got 4 goals, but it's going to come and bite them sooner or later. At the moment, it's working well because they can grind out results, but it's only so long you can go without scoring a lot of goals.
And one of those other teams with 4 goals is Adelaide, who went down to the Woo and are still without a win. But I mean, gee, they've looked like they've deserved to be in it in a few of these games, haven't they?
Yeah, and I think you and I might have spoken about this on Friday night. There's a stark difference between the two teams at the bottom of the league, in that Brisbane haven't looked competitive at all, and Adelaide feel as though they've been really unlucky nearly every game, that they've kind of deserved points and haven't got them. So another one of those teams where, they might be at the bottom of the league, but you feel that their luck is going to change at some point, and that Carl Viet's doing the right thing. It's just kind of not really working, clicking as it should at the moment. But another tough loss for Adelaide, but they've got the players and they've got the setup that is going to work. And I do still feel like they'll crack into the finals and they'll have a really good run of form.
Well, you say they've got the players, but unfortunately, Yankees picked up a quad injury and could be out for some months. And just in the way that he come in and replaced Urich up top and took that all on his shoulders, I think that might be a bit of a blow for them.
Yeah, I think it'll be a blow, but I think it'll be it offers Mo Torre an opportunity to come in, and we saw him play on Friday night, and he looks like he's physically developed even more since last year. He's still only 17 years old. He's as quick as anything. He's getting bigger as he gets older. He's getting bigger, and the more responsibility that Adelaide can put on him, I think he'll play even better. And with that spot opening up, we've seen Bernardo come on a few times on that right hand side up top, and he's looked like a hell of a player. And all it needs is one breakout performance from him, and he'll be in that team week in, week out. He's got a left foot just like his dad, doesn't he?
Yep, Adelaide and young talents.
Name a better duo.
And just before we do knock off from the A-League, Damo, name that flag in the Western Service Crew. Spotted a Rhodesian flag there. What's it doing there?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. And I sent this to a Zimbabwean friend of mine, and he said, I hope that's ignorance in the fact that it's just a flag that's the same color as their club. Otherwise, this is pretty fucking horrible.
Yeah. That's, Don't know what's going on there, guys, but bit weird. Going up next, match days 17 and 18 of the Premier League. Damo, we've got 2 match days of the Premier League to talk about, but actually not that many games considering over half of them were last week, so we probably won't touch on them too much. But as we said at the top, a lot have been cancelled or postponed because of COVID this weekend. So there are 4 results to run through. So why don't we run through those? 2 points dropped by Liverpool to Tottenham in the title race week, where City racked up another big score. But you could say that it was Spurs who actually dropped the points in this game. Spurs on the counter attack, just looking wasteful in the finishing, and probably should have won it.
Yeah, look, on another day, Harry Kane probably could have scored 4 goals. Harry Kane of last year, of pre-Euros, probably would have scored 4 goals, and could have if he wasn't sent off. Maybe he should have been in the first half, and I'm sure you've got an opinion on that. But I definitely agree with this. Looked like points dropped by Tottenham, which is something I wouldn't have expected to say before kickoff.
Yeah, just on that Harry Kane challenge, it was early in the game and he just went absolutely through Robbo. Was not reviewed by the VAR. He picked up a yellow for it. And then late on in the game, Robbo had his own red. It was a reckless challenge on Emerson. It was given a yellow, I think, in the match and then reviewed on VAR and upgraded to a red, and he went for it. And I think that's what people, including myself, are a bit upset about. It's just that inconsistency that the Kane challenge wasn't reviewed by the VAR. So some weird questions around that. And so arguably Kane shouldn't have been on the pitch, but that's football. But the thing I wanted to bring up was Kane was asked about this at the end of the game, like, what do you think of the challenge? And dead-eyed, he just said, no, nothing wrong with it. It's fine. It's, full-blooded challenge, something that's football.
He said it. Yeah, I think I got the ball. I think I won the ball. So, yeah, we'll
it's
leave
like,
it
it looks bad when you slow it down. Like, come on, mate. This is coming from the guy who swore on his daughter's life that he touched the ball to steal a goal from Ericsson. Like, come on, mate.
Look, I think the kind of overarching message from this game is that the refereeing was poor front to back. Both the referee in the middle of the field and the VAR were particularly poor. Maybe they probably got the Robertson decision right. They definitely got the Kane decision wrong. They definitely got the Robertson goal wrong with the Salah handball in the lead up. There's a lot of refereeing controversy in this game, and it's not what you want to see. And it only brings into question again that the fans love to shit on VAR and that it's not working as intended. And there was a good conversation that was had, I think it was either on Sky Sport or BBC after this game in the UK, about VAR isn't the problem. And, it's kind of what we've said for a few years, probably on this pod, is VAR is not the problem. It's the referee behind the camera that's the problem. And it's still down to individual error, and that's football. It's a game of judgment, and it's a game of opinions. And regardless of VAR, people are still going to get things wrong.
Yep, absolutely. It's the human side of it, and it's the way that it's applied as well. So thankfully, we haven't had that many controversies yet in this season of the A-League. And actually, I think last season, particularly the second half, was pretty good too. So touch wood, I think we've got a bit of a handle on it down here, but maybe I've just jinxed it. Liverpool, obviously, those 2 points dropped. They're now sitting 3 points behind Man City, who just got it done again against Newcastle, 4-0. They're now sitting top of the table for the first time in a couple of years at Christmas this time, because it's been Liverpool for the past couple of seasons. They won the golf derby over their oil-rich rivals, Newcastle United. Goals to Diaz, Cancelo, Mahrez, Sterling, 72% possession, like 91% passing accuracy to Newcastle's 81, like 18 shots to 5. This just looked every bit like first versus last or second last that it was. So absolutely dominant from City.
Yeah, look, and I think the big thing about City is there was questions asked when Aguero left, who is going to be the reliable goal scorer, and then they missed out on signing Harry Kane because of a couple of £1 million, and everyone said, "Oh, well, that's not City going to win the league," and what are they going to do without a striker? I mean, but the goals are coming from absolutely everywhere. And I think they beat Leeds 7-0 last week and had 7 different goal scorers. They beat Newcastle 4-0 this week and 4 different goal scorers. It's just, I mean, you can't stop them. And whatever you try to stop, they've got something else. And I mean, it also helps that Cancelo at right back / central midfield is turned into one of the best players in the world nearly in the way he's playing at the moment. And it feels like
Does
he
what
can
he
do
wants.
anything right now.
Plays where he wants, scores when he wants.
Yeah.
Like unstoppable. Yeah, absolutely. And just onto Newcastle, though, we can't just bang on about City. Tommy C got into the comments before the pod and just wants to know, are Newcastle worse under Howe?
It seemingly, yes. But to be fair,
Hard to tell.
I think they were always going to have a tough start under Eddie Howe. I feel like they gave a manager the job at the wrong time. They had a horrible run of fixtures after he got appointed. And I think I said that on the pod after they gave him the job. They've set him up for failure. They've got like 5 or 6 incredibly hard games before the new year. So, I mean, but they had to do what they did. So, yeah, it's tough to say because they were really, really poor before he got the job. So how can you say they're even worse?
Yeah, they've got United next, then Everton. But after that comes Southampton, Watford at home, Leeds away. Then they've got Everton again, this time at home. So if they can get through the United and Everton fixture, I guess with some points, and then they need to start chalking up a few wins. But
they're hanging out for January, aren't they?
Yeah, they absolutely are. And I mean, they're on 10 points above Norwich on goal difference, who are also on 10 points, and then Burnley on 11. Watford on 13, Leeds on 16, Southampton on 17. So yeah, I mean, there's still every chance that they could stay up. So it's tight at the bottom.
And look, they'll likely spend every penny that their financial fair play allows them to in January.
That war chest, yeah.
Which I think their financial fair play allows them to spend up to £220 million in January, and I wouldn't be surprised if they spend all of it
on Mbappe.
Yeah, yeah, and still go down. Mbappe in the championship. You love to see
Mbappe in the championship. Who's scoring more goals in the championship, Mbappe or Ryan Brewster?
Well, Mbappe, the championship's probably the same level as Ligue 1, so probably Mbappe.
Wolves, Chelsea, 0-0. I only watched the highlights of this one, and thank God I did.
The highlight was about 12 seconds long, and it was
12 seconds.
It was a cross that no one got on the end of.
Chelsea dropping more points. They lost to West Ham. They made tough work of Leeds, and then they dropped points to Everton and dropped points to Wolves. Damo, champion teams generally don't have this many wobbles, do they?
No, and look, I don't know what Tuchel's been doing over the Christmas period, but looks like he's been eating a lot of food because he's getting pretty large.
We're going to have to get the fat filter out on Tuchel, aren't we? So can we say, has it turned from a 3-horse race into a 2-horse race?
Look, I don't think you can write them off yet. They're not that many points behind, really.
Good, because I said they're going to win the league, so they need to be in it.
Yeah, look, I don't think they're not that many points behind, and it's been a really horrible run of form when they're still within reach. So you would suspect that Chelsea would go on another really good run of form where they take points off everyone. So I wouldn't say they're out of it yet.
Wolves, meanwhile, have only scored 2 goals in their last 7 games and only have 13 in total for the season. They're the second. I'm just looking at the table. Yeah, they're the second lowest goals for, and they're sitting in 8th. It's only their goals against 14 and sitting on a -1 goal difference that's sort of keeping them up there. But bloody hell, that's some dour football.
Yeah, and I don't know how they're so high in the league. It really bemuses me that they've been getting the results they have. It's kind of like, that's kind of where I see Wu sort of going, is that they're not scoring goals, but somehow they keep getting points.
Leeds, meanwhile, aren't getting any points and are still in their own potential relegation battle after losing 4-1 to Arsenal. Could they go down?
Yeah, and look, I said in the Premier League preview that I think Leeds will finish 1 spot above the relegation zone, and it would come right down to the wire. At this stage, it's looking like they're very much in a relegation battle, and I think all this chat about Bielsa being a football genius, and although tactically he knows a lot about the game, there's always been something missing from him as a manager, and clearly the Premier League has tested him, and Leeds just keep keep conceding goals, and he can't find a way to stop leaking them.
Maybe
And
there's
I
another
think,
manager to get the fat filter out for.
does he need one?
Oh, jeez.
I think only Newcastle have conceded more goals in the league this year than Leeds, and in how poor Newcastle have been, I think they've only conceded 4 more goals than Leeds have. So that's pretty grim if you're a Leeds fan. And look, everyone knows I don't like Leeds, but it's not looking good for Leeds. But like I've always said, the Premier League's better when Leeds are in the league, and I hope they stay up, even though I don't like them. But it's going to be a tough year for them to stay up.
Arsenal, though, they're looking pretty good, sitting up in 4th. Their young kids stood up. My boy Swagriel Martinelli's back in the goals, and Saka, and then Smith Rowe with his tiny shin pads. Future looking bright there.
Yeah, Arsenal have got a good crop of young players, and I think they've sort of done, and I think we've spoken about this before. They brought Arteta in to sort of level the ship, if you could say, and he's brought in a lot of young players to kind of build the future, and then they'll get a big manager in and they'll take the next step. So they're at where they want to be at, and if they finish in the top 4, that's only a bonus.
The Tom Aldred fan page on Twitter asks, Arsenal says Arsenal are sitting pretty at the moment due to teams around them missing games. Is their current position a fair reflection? So I think West Ham have got a game in hand on them, and United
West Ham have got 2. A game in hand. Spurs have got 3 games in hand. Yeah. So there's there's a lot of teams around them with games in hand, and like I said, Arsenal are at their level, and their level probably is between 4th and 8th. And if all those teams behind them play their games in hand and win them or get points, they'll probably be in 6th or 7th. So they're right where they want to be.
As Jesse likes to say, though, points in the bank are better than games in hand. So
that's right.
You'd take Arsenal's position, I think. And I think that will do us for the Premier League. I don't know if we will touch match day 17 in the end. It seems so far away. There's like weird 7-0s back there and stuff. I don't know if we want to touch that, listeners. But thank you, as always, for sticking with us for another week and sticking around. We've loved to have you listening to the pod, so thanks again. Next week on the pod, we'll be coming back with match day 19 of the Premier League, assuming it all goes ahead, and round 6 of the A-League, as well as some action in the FFA Cup quarterfinals. But until then, enjoy the football.